Hello again. It's been less than a month since the old season finished. We're back for the new season of ESPN FC Live. Mark Donaldson, James Olley, Don Hutchison with you as the Premier League begins today. We're going to look ahead to the season. Who might be the surprise packet? The 6 main protagonists we will discuss. And with Liverpool against Bournemouth today, and James Olley having travelled 3 times round the world over the summer, he cannot wait for the new season to begin. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm all right. I'm good. It's a privilege to do the job, I have to say. I do remind myself of that when I don't have a summer holiday. But no, it's been great. Obviously, it is going to affect the Premier League. I think, the fact that some clubs have had a proper pre-season, others have had virtually none at all. And we know every year it feels like this one season bleeds into another. But I do think that this year that impact is going to be felt perhaps more than any other.
Yeah, you were with Chelsea when they won the World Cup and became the best team in the universe, not just planet Earth. You were also in the Far East and the Middle East and whatever with the London side. So plenty to talk about, a lot of new faces as well, but one of the returning faces to ESPN FC Live that we're delighted with. And while James, you would expect to get ill with all those flights, but he hasn't. A man who's had man flu, Don Hutchison, hasn't travelled too far, apart from France and a few other places. But now you're struggling ahead of the new season. You'll be fine, though. Late fitness test, you're going to pass it?
Yeah. I had a fitness test this morning. I'm fine. I had a couple of wobbly little days last week where, I was in bed with the flu, the man flu, and the whole world was going to collapse, and I was weak and this, that, and the other. But, I went down the mines. I went 35 years like my dad did down the mines. I dug deep, and I'm absolutely fine, raring to go. I've been all over the place. Like James, I was doing the Club World Cup over in America. It was nice to be in Miami and Cincinnati, Atlanta, Florida. Then I came back and done a week in Portrush watching the brilliant golfers of the world, watching Scheffler win the Open. Then I had a week in France glamping, which was very different and very new. So I'm roaring to be back, boys.
We're going to focus on the main protagonists. Before we do for the Premier League, I was looking back at the odds for last season. And the title favourites finished third, the second favourites finished second, and the third favourites won the Premier League. The title favourites were Manchester City, second favourites were Arsenal, and third favourites were Liverpool. Okay, James, this season the favourites are Liverpool, the second favourites are Arsenal, the third favourites are Manchester City. So, I know we'll get our predictions individually. Do you think we might get a role reversal 12 months after we got a role reversal of the odds for last season?
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of this hinges on Liverpool, doesn't it? Because obviously they won the title last year. They were the best team, but they've also had to go through something of a rebuild. And I think a lot of the questions that we asked about Arne Slot inheriting Liverpool from Jurgen Klopp last summer ended up not really applying, because, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to Arne Slot as well, because he did a fantastic job almost by just tweaking things here and there, but allowing that team to grow almost in the mould that it had done under Jurgen Klopp, albeit with 1 or 2 tweaks. Whereas this summer, we've obviously seen them invest heavily in the market. We don't think they're done. They look a little different, or a little more different than they did last season. And Slot's kind of having more of an influence on the way they play. And I think he's already spoken about how they're going to have to adapt their style to the new players that they have. So, really, the questions around Liverpool are 12 months on now valid. Can Arne Slot really impose himself on this team properly, really take them and mould them in his own image? Of course, he does so from a great position of strength because they've won the league. He's exceeded all expectations. He's done a fantastic job there so far. But we're in this sort of slightly unusual position of the favourites and last season's champions having strengthened, and yet there's quite a lot we don't really know about them going into the new season. It all hinges on that, really.
And as a Newcastle fan, Don Hutchison, a month ago you were thinking what a season this could be to build on last season. Now you wonder if your best player might never play for your team again and will sign for Liverpool before the transfer window. What are you hearing with regards to Alexander Isaac, and when the transfer window closes, where he'll be playing his football?
It's a difficult one because from what I'm hearing is Newcastle will not sell. They've told Liverpool the number, which is quite close to £140 million. I think Liverpool have gone in with a really low ball offer at 110, and that's Newcastle on entertaining any sort of number if it's not close to 140. So he's got 3 years left on his contract to 2028. So they're in a position of strength. At the same time, where they are a little bit weak, here comes the contradiction where Eddie Howe needs 2 strikers. He's lost Callum Wilson. And as it stands, he's lost his best striker and one of the best in the world in Alexander Isaac. So he needs 2 bodies through the door before he even entertains selling the star man. He's the one I feel sorry for. The Newcastle fans will drop Alexander Isaac within 5 minutes. There's a reason why they sing for Alan Shearer. There's a reason why they sing for Kevin Keegan. There's even a reason why they sing for Andy Cole, who was sensational with Peter Beardsley in the spell he was at Newcastle, and he left for Man United. They still sing Andy Cole's name. The way Isaac and his agent have gone about this is absolutely disgusting, in my opinion. I mean, saying you'll never play for the club again, trying to hold the club to ransom, down in tools and coming back from the pre-season tour, and not even training with the first team. Eddie Howe, he can't do anymore. I think he's handled it as good as he could. That's what you have to do. You can't just say, right, you can train with us, and it would come across a little bit weak. So he's got rid of him in terms of the training times. It's still very much up in the air because if Newcastle sign Wissa from Brentford and another, it was rumoured to be Šeško, then I would imagine the deal would have got done. But as you said, it's bizarre how football works, because I sat here 3 weeks ago with no talk of Isaac going, and I genuinely thought when Newcastle put that bid in for Hugo Ekitike, I genuinely thought, hand on heart, they could compete with the top 3. And I'm sincere about that. The best midfield in the country, I think, because they complement each other really well, on top of Anthony Gordon, the new signings of Anthony Elanga, Isaac and Ekitike, Harvey Barnes, etc., etc. It was looking really promising, and Liverpool have just absolutely decimated what Newcastle have been trying to build in this summer. Taking away Ekitike and trying to take away Alexander Isaac. They nearly took away Anthony Gordon 6 months ago. So it leaves Newcastle, scratching around to this Villa game of the weekend, which is a hard place when you've got a fully fit squad to try and go and get a result. So I would imagine the morale is quite low. The pre-season results would tell you that. They've not been great in pre-season. So I think the saga just needs to end. Someone's got to come out and say, and put a flag in the sand and say, right, he's going to go or he's staying. That's what needs to happen, because the fans are left in the lurch. But as I said, it's Eddie Howe and the players I feel sorry for.
James, would Isaac be the final piece of the Liverpool jigsaw, or with the speculation that we're reading about this week on ESPN FC about Mark Gahey and Liverpool potentially coming in for him, although that's probably now looking likely it might be next summer, do you still think they need to do some work, even if they get Alexander Isaac?
Well, they are short at centre-back. I know that they're obviously making moves in that area. It's pretty clear they've identified Mark Gahey as the one who they think, I guess, would be the sort of first reserve, if you like, in that position. And he would certainly, his pedigree would more than suit that role. I mean, look, you do sort of feel as though Isak's one of those kind of game-changing signings, really, that if they do get him through the door, on paper, they are by some distance, you would say, the strongest, certainly 11 and maybe 15 or 16 in the league. And but the game's not played on paper. The game is played with, you need that chemistry and that understanding. And one of the things of this, of course, if it does run late into the window and they do get him over the line, he won't have had a proper pre-season. He's not trained with the first team. He's not trained with Newcastle. He's been training on his own. So you'd imagine that he's going to need some time to get himself up to speed. And the only other thing I'd say about Isaac is that Newcastle have used him very cleverly in terms of, he's had a very checkered fitness record, and they've been able to kind of not necessarily rotate him, but just manage his fitness quite well. And I think if you're going to pay 140 odd million pounds for a centre forward, you would expect him to start every single week and 3 times a week, perhaps in the Champions League as well, when that is going. And that is a bit of a doubt about Isaac, whether he can actually do that. And I wonder whether they've looked at Ekitike and Isaac and thought, well, okay, when people say, oh, why would you sign Ekitike if you're going to go and get Isaac? I think that might be the reason, that they might feel actually they need to probably rotate him, as silly as it might sound for a player who could be that expensive. But I do think if they get Isaac over the line, he's been a fantastic striker for Newcastle. The whole world and his wife wanted to sign him. Arsenal, I think, would have really gone for him if they felt he was available. So, it does. They're clear favourites probably already. I think if they get Isaac, they're even further clear.
Second favourites, Don, are Arsenal. Now they've strengthened. They've added some good players as well. Zubimendi, 70 million from Real Sociedad. Gyökeres, 66 million from Sporting. Madueke, 56 million from Chelsea. And even Christian Norgard's a good addition from Brentford. Arsene Wenger finished second 3 times. After that, he won the title. Can Mikel Arteta do the same?
Could do. I think you're looking at a season where it's going to be a season of margins. Arsenal were very unlucky last year with the amount of injuries that they had. You have to try and remember, they were playing some really good football and really confident football and looking like most weeks at the very start and middle part of the season, they could turn anyone over. It was the fact that the injuries decimated them. It happens to everyone. It happened to Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp when all the centre-backs got injured, and that has a knock-on effect. But they can do. And there's always context to how a manager does, I think. People are sort of, in my opinion, people are very quick to turn around and go, well, 6 year, he has to win a title. Well, only one team can win that title. And when you're going for a Champions League on top of domestic football, there's always context to how Mikel Arteta does. If he had a brilliant race in the Premier League and lost out by a point or two, and he got in a Champions League final or won the Champions League, you can't then say, well, he hasn't won a Premier League. I mean, you can, don't get me wrong, I say that very loosely, but you wouldn't criticise him because you feel as though, even though 5-6 years feels like a long time in football, they are building from where they've come from. And on top of the Isaac going to Liverpool, they're up against some teams that have got some serious firepower. Chelsea, I think, have signed brilliantly in João Pedro. I think he's going to be an amazing signing for them. That's the one as a Newcastle fan. I would have took him well before Benjamin Šeško. So I wasn't that worried when Šeško didn't sign and go to Man United because they need that centre forward like Isaac that can come short and link the play. But from Arsenal, what they've done is they've got strength in Max Dowman, who's only 15. They've got Nwaneri, they've got Bukayo Saka. So the youth is still there. They're starting to add goals. We've sat here and said forever they need a top-class number 9. Well, I think he was a little bit stubborn, Mikel Arteta, and he thought he could win the league without one. Now he's went and got one. He's got a proven one. So now let's see what they've got. This might be the season where it tests their bottle, it tests their nerve, and it tests their quality. So let's see how they do. But I wouldn't write them out the title race. I think Liverpool are favourites, don't get me wrong. But as I said before, it's margined in this game, and anything can happen in terms of injuries. And what Liverpool had, I mean, yeah, they had 3 or 4 injuries at the tail end of the season and the latter part, but they still got through it. Arsenal need a clear run, and with fair wind, they could have a title charge.
James, I've lost count of the number of times over the past 3 or 4 years on ESPN FC Live, whether it's been you and Don or whoever it's been, we've discussed Arsenal. Why aren't they signing a striker? We can't say that anymore. They've signed a striker. They got 69 goals last season. Does this automatically mean they're going to get more goals? And if it doesn't, who scored the goals last season that Gyökeres is going to take goals away from this season?
Well, the key to Gyökeres' success is going to be whether they can adapt their style to suit his game. And a lot of the talk around the pre-season tour that I was on with them in Asia was about this idea that they're going to try and play a little bit more direct. They're going to try and get the ball forward earlier into those attacking positions because they recognise that Gyökeres is not somebody who's going to come deep and link the play. He's somebody who needs to play in between the 2 centre-halves on the shoulder and get in behind. And for Arsenal to be able to do that effectively, they need to get the ball sort of forward quicker, and be able to exploit that space in behind. Where the challenge is going to come for Arsenal is that a lot of their home games are basically where teams come and play 5 at the back, 2 banks of 4, and sort of sit on the edge of their own box and try and break them down. So getting the ball forward quicker is going to be almost irrelevant, really, because there's no space in behind. You're going to have to move it quicker in those attacking positions. And that's where I think someone like Zubimendi will probably come into play a little bit more, someone who can orchestrate games, who can kind of dictate the tempo of matches. And the link up between those two, I think it was significant. I thought that Zubimendi cross Gyökeres header for his first goal at the Emirates last weekend in the friendly. I think that's what they're hoping to see a lot more of. But that idea of getting the ball forward quicker and just the tweak in their system, how effectively they can do that, because one of the criticisms, of course, of Arsenal is that they've been a little bit too static, that they play with that sort of horseshoe, where they control the game and they move it right to left, left to right, and then they're not really able to open teams up enough. Well, I'm not sure Gyökeres by himself solves that issue unless you are able to just change your style a little bit and be a little bit more unpredictable in the way that you use the ball. So that's why Zubimendi is such an important signing for them as well. It's almost as if Zubimendi is the key to Gyökeres to some extent. But they drew 14 games last season. That's the problem. They drew 14 games. It's too many. And they found themselves knocking heads against that problem of being able to open teams up and then take the chances when they create them.
I think you make a great point. James, I think you make a great point in terms of, I think we're seeing stylistically now over the last, and it might sort of carry on, a spate of centre forwards that come and link the play, which make the team better. We see that with João Pedro. You'll see that with Ekitike or Alexander Isaac. The ones that have sort of semi-struggled, and Gyökeres comes into the bracket of Darwin Núñez when you build a profile of player. What does Darwin Núñez, what does Gyökeres want in terms of, balls into his feet? Yeah, he can handle them, but it's not his strength. He wants balls placed down the side. You think of Erling Haaland. Well, if you have defensively lots of bodies either behind him or 2 6s in front of him, you can stop that service. So unless you're playing away from home, that's why I think Darwin Núñez, apart from a confidence thing, and by the way, I'm still stunned that Newcastle didn't take Darwin Núñez because I think there's a player in there. But in terms of the new centre forward, now you think Harry Kane years ago and still doing it today, got the ability to come short, link the play. Firmino's the best example at Liverpool where he comes short, very reliable in terms of getting the ball to his feet. Mane scored goals, Salah scored goals, Wijnaldum scored goals, all off the back of a number 9 that was reliable and coming short. That's going to be the test now for Arsenal because Gyökeres, even though he can handle the ball coming short, his main strength is getting down the sides of centre-backs and racing away from them because he is quick, he is powerful, and he can finish. So how they sort of adapt his style to the other boys that I mentioned, where they're coming short, linking the play and getting goals for other people, it's going to be very interesting to see how Arsenal sort of manufacture that style early on.
Yeah, I'm glad James mentioned Zubimendi. Commentated on him a lot in La Liga with Real Sociedad, and we thought he might be in the Premier League 12 months ago, but decided to stay for one more year, and he could be the one who not just unlocks Gyökeres, but also allows Declan Rice to play that little bit further forward, and that could be something that Arsenal can exploit this season. Now, if history repeats itself, the third favourites from last year winning the title, that was Liverpool. The third favourites this year, James, are Manchester City. Now, Rodri will come back. He'll not be ready for the start of the season. They've added Reinders, who was brilliant at AC Milan. They've added Ait Nouri. They've added Cherki as well. Yes, they've lost Kevin De Bruyne, which is a blow, but it wasn't the Kevin De Bruyne of 3-4 years ago. They'll be quite happy, won't they, that most people are kind of letting them go under the radar ahead of this title challenge because Pep will be desperate to make amends for last year.
Yeah, they will. I mean, they don't go into this season with the same sense of expectation sort of surrounding them, perhaps because of last year, but they have spent a significant amount of money. I mean, look, I do think we have to. The starting point for this Manchester City chat is the fact that they're able to start this season without knowing what the outcome of the hearing is into the 115 charges. I mean, it is frankly ludicrous that we're in this position, that we're going into another campaign where they don't know the outcome, we don't know the outcome, and it does cast a bit of a shadow over Manchester City and the whole league, really, that we're still in this position where we just don't know what's going to happen and how badly they're going to be punished. I think they've spent heavily in the market. I mean, I don't have particular insight into this, but it does. You could see how they've spent heavily in the market, not just because of last season, but because they may also be fearing what's coming down the track if there was a transfer ban or if there were a heavy points deduction or some sort of sanction that might make them a less appealing club. They sort of think, well, let's get those players in the door now and let's sort of create that siege mentality and get them integrated into the group, and then whatever comes along. I mean, I'm sort of interested to kind of see exactly how they go about it, because, you know, there's been a lot of chat about Donnarumma coming in, and that adds to the conversation of, you sort of look at him and think he's not really a Pep Guardiola goalkeeper. I mean, right when he came in, he kind of bombed out a really good shot stopper and someone who wasn't particularly good with their feet in Joe Hart. I'm not saying that I think Donnarumma is a lot better goalkeeper than Joe Hart was, but that idea that my goalkeeper has to be able to play out from the back with the ball at his feet. Well, if you're going after Donnarumma, I'm not sure I really see that with him. Does that indicate perhaps that they're going to maybe try and be a little bit more direct, that maybe there's going to be a slightly different way that they're going to play? And again, similarly to what we were talking about with Arsenal and also Liverpool, I mean, they've signed quite not just they haven't really bolstered the squad so much as they've changed the starting lineup quite significantly. And that will take some time to feel it out, and there was a sense of kind of positivity and a bit of momentum about them at the Club World Cup. And then, of course, they crashed out much, much earlier than everybody anticipated. And that's just created this little uncertainty again. So, we're going to have to sort of see the first sort of 2 or 3 games about exactly how effective they are with these new players. And they're going to need a lot of them to hit the ground running, and especially because they don't have Rodri there to stitch it all together.
Don, for 2 or 3 years, it's been a 3-horse race for the title, either Manchester City, either Liverpool or Arsenal. Do we now have a 4-horse race for the title? Because Enzo Maresca has certainly found something with Chelsea and Club World Cup. That's going to be interesting to see with the lack of preparation for the new season that's going to happen after the Club World Cup. But is this now a 4-horse race for the Premier League title that includes Chelsea?
I think early on, yeah, but I think they'll fade away.
Okay.
Excuse me. I think when you look at Chelsea last season, they're the youngest team and youngest squad in the Premier League. And it was a little bit of an unknown quantity and unknown how they were going to sort of compete and compare in the long term. I think they've improved in terms of their signings. I think João Pedro is going to be an amazing signing for them. I worry about Levi Colwill, he's got a really bad injury. I still worry about their number one. I still worry defensively. Can they cope? They're building a fantastic squad in terms of wide players, midfield players, and strikers. It's just I'm not convinced yet, and it's not a dig at Chelsea. It's just because the teams they're competing with feel like to me that they're that little bit further down the road. I think Liverpool are further down the road. Arsenal and Man City. The Man City one is very interesting because they're a really unknown. When you look at the signings like Cherky and Reinders, fantastic players. Aït-Nouri is not a defender; he's a wing back. So defensively, it's going to be interesting to see how they cope. But I think Chelsea are going places. I think they're strengthening. I think they're looking good. I'd like to try and see them buy that Frank Leboeuf or that Desai, that really experienced centre back that's going to marshal them in difficult games, in difficult times. But I think when you look at the work that Maresca and Chelsea have done, I think it's very, very positive. In terms of winning the league, I'd put them in the race early on. At the end of it, I think they'll finish 4th. I don't think they'll be contenders, not because they're not a good side or they're just probably not capable. As I said, I just think the 3 teams that are competing with them are that further down the road. It'll be it'll be some title win, by the way. If they won the league this year, it'll be off the charts because no one would have. I'd imagine if you're asking any journalists or pundits or anyone to try and predict who's going to win the league, there'll be 1% that would predict Chelsea. So it'd be amazing if they'd done it. I don't see it.
Well, not many people thought they would win the Club World Cup, though, James, did they, in a tactical mastermind class from Maresca? And look what happens.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate the impact of that either. I mean, they were playing competitive football in 30, 35 degree heat until the middle of July. They've had no proper pre-season really to speak of. They've had a training block at Cobham, and away we go again. With the first game obviously tomorrow. So, Sunday I think they play, but it's one of those where you just assume that even though they are a young squad, very young squad, as Don says, they've got more strength in depth than they've had now because of the window that they've had. You just have to feel that it's going to catch up with them at some point. Not least because we talk about the young group and maybe having the energy to be able to take this on. But last season in the Conference League, they were able to rotate their entire 11 for the group stage. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to do that this time. They can't give Cole Palmer every midweek off for until the new year. So you're going to be asking this group to have to go 3 times a week, having not really had a pre-season, and as I say, having had that real exertion, that emotional and physical roller coaster of playing for an extra month and winning the Club World Cup. They should be on a high from that, of course, and I'm sure it will give them a lot of confidence. But it is also sort of worth stating that I don't know whether Maresca is entirely put to bed the criticism that he was facing towards the back end of last season. Now, he should have done. He's earned the right to do that because, of course, they qualified for the Champions League, they won the Conference League, and then they won the Club World Cup. But it's easy to forget that at the back end of last season, there was a section of the fan base who'd go to Stamford Bridge and they would start grumbling about the style of play, about whether they were getting the ball forward quickly enough, just what they were watching, was it quite good enough? And again, while they've strengthened in the market and while I think Maresca's sort of emboldened himself and strengthened his own kind of power base, if you like. It's easy to see how 2 or 3 difficult results at the start of the season, players not quite fully tuned up for the challenges that they've got after the pre-season they've had. And those murmurings could start again, and it could start to get a little bit difficult for Maresca. That would be my concern for them. So I think they really need to have a strong start to be able to build on that momentum. And then, as Don will know far better than me, if you're winning every week, they always say you don't feel the tiredness in your legs anyway.
Let's look at who might join Chelsea as a potential candidate for a top 4 spot. If we assume, and that's always dangerous, Don, that it's the top 3 again in whichever order, who do you think might be coming up the inside? Who might be the surprise packet, a bit like Nottingham Forest were, a bit like Brighton have been as well? You've got to remember as well, teams like Villa competing in Champions League, like Newcastle as well. So who are Chelsea's challengers, do you think, to kind of be best of the rest, if that's...
To be honest, Mark, I think it's pretty much set in stone. The top 4 is the top 4. Okay. I don't think Spurs can get there with Champions League football. Man United are making good strides in the signings that they've made, but are they really going to jump from 5th bottom all the way into the top 4? Highly unlikely. Newcastle, I'd like to think, being a Newcastle fan, we could challenge, but if Isaac goes, then it's nigh on impossible on top of Champions League football as well. So I think you're pretty much looking at a top 4 that I would be stunned if anyone gate crashed that. I mean, Aston Villa, European football, but they've lost Rashford, they've lost Asensio. They haven't really strengthened. There's talks of Leon Bailey, I think, going to Roma. So their squad, Jacob Ramsey's just signed for Newcastle. So they're losing bodies on top of a PSR problem. So they need to bring some top quality in. So I think, I hand on heart, mate, honestly think no one's going to challenge this top 4. There's good sides out there that had really good seasons last year. Bournemouth were a fantastic story. Their back 4 has just been absolutely decimated in terms of who's gone. I mean, Kirkes went to Liverpool, House and Real Madrid, Zabani's gone to PSG. So they're going to find it hard. Fulham, maybe, but I don't think they've got enough probably depth. Brighton I like, but at any given time, someone could go in and bid £100 million for Belieber, and that
Chelsea
takes a lot away from their game. So
maybe not Belieber, because he's been linked with Manchester United.
Exactly. So to be honest, mate, to answer your question, I don't think anyone's going to gate crash that top 4 unless Newcastle keep Isaac. Then maybe Newcastle could have a 2-way fight with Chelsea, but I think it's Chelsea's.
Šeško, Mbeumo, Cunha. Over 210 million spent on 3 players, 3 really good players that are going to transform Manchester United's attack, James, especially when you've got Bruno Fernandes providing for those 3. But it hasn't really changed too much in other areas of the squad. I'm sure there'll be an improvement from last season, but Man United finished 15th last year and Spurs were 17th. Realistically, what's the kind of glass ceiling for Ruben Amorim and his team this year?
Well, I think they've got to be targeting a return to European football of some form. I think if they end up with the Europa League, I think they'd probably take it. I'm sure they're targeting Champions League football. I mean, I was speaking to our colleague Rob Dawson actually about this, and he's been on tour with United, and he was saying that some of the staff there have been discussing the Chelsea season, was it 16-17, when under Antonio Conte, when they finished 10th the year before and then they went and won the title. And part of that is obviously they had clear weeks. They had no European football and they were able to train and prepare for 1 game a week. And that they have to turn that into a serious advantage. And if Ruben Amorim can talk quite legitimately about taking that job mid-season, not having a pre-season to work with the players, having games every 3 days, week after week after week, well, that's been removed. You know, he's had a full pre-season. And as I say, he's going to have clear weeks to train time after time after time. He will have a group of players who will be fully attuned to the Premier League and the Premier League alone. And that should give them an advantage. The concern is when you look at the starting lineup and it starts to look a bit imbalanced, because as exciting as those 3 attacking players are, and I think, you know, and again, talking about earlier, Liverpool, Arsenal, integrating these players, I mean, who knows how that's going to work, because you assume all 3 could start against Arsenal at Old Trafford on Sunday, but we just don't know how those 3 are going to gel. They've not had much time to do it. Šeško's obviously not been through the door that long. But if that means that Bruno Fernandes plays as one of the 2 central midfielders, you are asking the other central midfielder to do an awful lot of defensive work out of possession. and to protect that back three. And really, what do you ask the wing backs to do then? Do they not push on as much? Perhaps they have to drop a little bit deeper and provide a little bit more support for the midfield. That sole midfield pivot, who you assume will be who? Casemiro, maybe? Ugarte kind of fell out of favour at the back end of last season. Kobbie Mainoo, who's not really played much football under Amorim of late. So you sort of think, well, are we going back to the debate about Casemiro and whether he's still good enough at this level to be able to stitch it all together? That's an even bigger ask if you've got Bruno Fernandes playing alongside you, rather than having, say, an Ugarte alongside him, with Fernandes playing as a number 10. So, United are going to have to be very, very good with the ball to not be badly exposed without it. And that would be the concern, because, of course, they were savaged at times last season without the ball. And you do wonder, particularly with Arsenal, how good they are on transition. And again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, if they want to get the ball forward quicker and they're looking to play more direct, then you do fear a little bit for United if they can't control that midfield and control the ball well enough.
The other team I want to focus on, Don, before you get your predictions at the end of ESPN FC Live today, is Tottenham Hotspur. Do they finish above Manchester United this season?
I don't think they will. I've got Man United finishing 6th. I think the Thomas Frank signing's a brilliant one. I've been shouting his name for Man United for quite a few years, so it's a brilliant coup for Tottenham that they've got him, because we saw in the Super Cup, and I've watched his Brighton side for a long time now. Brentford, sorry. He's a completely different animal than Ruben Amorim, where he'll put his flag in the sand, Amorim, and say, right, we are playing this system, and I've got to juggle my personnel to play in this system. Thomas Frank will change his system for any given game that's coming up. He played 3 at the back against PSG in the Super Cup. It suited Pedro Porro as a wing-back. It suited Jed Spence as a wing-back on the left-hand side. There'll be other games where he'll play a flat-back 4. He's done that at Brentford as well. He's a manager that's really got an eye on, what you have to do is make sure you're not telling your team about the opposition too much, because it can make you feel a little bit inferior in terms of, he really rates the opposition. You've got to make sure there's a balance between making sure that your team's good enough and your team's in the right system. But there's a huge part of the game now where you have to look at the opposition. And I think that's Thomas Frank's strength. I think he looks at the opposition. He tries to identify their weakness. He'll try and prey on that. But Spurs fans will be in for a good ride, I think. They're not the finished article yet. Being in the Champions League is going to be huge for them, and that's going to take its toll, especially under this new format. So that's quite exciting for the Tottenham fans. And, I think they're going to have a really good season. I just think it reminds me a little bit when Newcastle got in the Champions League, when they demolished, and Newcastle fans will tell you, one of the best nights of their life when they tore apart PSG in the Champions League, St James's Park. But they finished, I think, 9th or 10th that season, and had a little bit of an impact on the Premier League on terms of how Newcastle done that season. I see a similar story with Tottenham this season. It's going to go well. The Champions League is amazing for them. Maybe they're going to go domestically and win a trophy, but trying to get into the top 6, I think, might be a little bit of a stretch.
James, the 3 that have come up are the 3 that went back down. It's happened a couple of times now. Is this the season that bucks that trend?
Well, there's something about Sunderland, and I know everybody's predicting them to go down, but for me, there's something about Sunderland that I just feel they've been quite clever in the market. I think Granit Xhaka is a really good signing for them. I can see why they've made him club captain. It's a difficult, cliche, difficult place to go, but it is a tough place to go and play your football. If they can make that a difficult environment for teams, then they've got half a chance there. Of course, you can say the same in particular for Leeds and Ellen Road, fantastic old ground. But I don't know. I've just had this thing in the back of my mind about Sunderland that maybe they can survive. You do fear a little bit for Brentford. If I had to pick one of the teams that is currently sort of established in the league that might go down, Brentford are the one that I'd be concerned about. They've obviously lost Thomas Frank. They've lost Mbuemo. They've lost Christian Norgard. They may well lose Visser as well. It just feels as though there's been such stability at that club for such a long period of time, and Thomas Frank was such an integral part of that. To ask them to go again with an inexperienced manager at the highest level, they'd be the ones that I think the other 3 newly promoted sides will be looking at and thinking, well, they could be a target for us to try and finish above. West Ham, not sure that they've had a great summer themselves. Graham Potter ended last season under a little bit of pressure. He starts this one perhaps under a little bit more. I think there are one or two sort of vulnerable sides, sort of established Premier League sides. Again, you could see them having a difficult season. And yeah, I think one of the three will stay up. And if I had to pick, I'd say Sunderland.
Oh,
yes. So do I. I think one stays up, and Don, teams that have come up and have gone chasing, it doesn't usually work well for them. Southampton came up, tried to play the same football, and look what happened to them. There's something about Burnley and the goals conceded last season, best in the division, all those clean sheets. And I know they've lost James Trafford back to Manchester City, but Vincent Kompany will have them ready. Esteve at the back is a solid defender, and for Leeds, if they've learned from coming up the last time and then going straight back down, I think there's a case to be made, and I'm glad that James has made the Sunderland case, but I think there's a case as well for Leeds and for Burnley to think that at least one of them can stay up this season.
Yeah, I think Burnley under Scott Parker, I think, as you said before, they broke all the records in English football last season in terms of the clean sheets record, how many points they won away from home. Just off the back of what James said there, I texted Leroy Rossini, who's a good friend of mine, and his son Liam's the manager at Strasbourg, and Sunderland just signed a guy called Habib Diarra. So I just pinged him a quick text, just saying, give me a couple of words on him, how he's going to do, and he comes straight back, and I've got the words in front of me. He said, great athlete, very mobile, super aggressive when he's pressing, gets forward, gets the odd goal, was captain, and good leadership as well. So on the top of him and Granit Xhaka, I think two fantastic signs for Sunderland, and I agree with James. I think Sunderland will stay up. Burnley's story is all about defensive and clean sheets and being hard to beat, which is completely different to Russell Martin's outlook at Southampton. I don't see Burnley staying up. I don't know if they've got enough goals in them. And I know that's a contradiction, but I mean in the Premier League wise, because your centre forwards now are coming up against the best defenders in European football and best goalkeepers at the same time. So how they're going to get enough goals to try and stay up, I can't imagine. You'll be looking at Burnley's clean sheet record next year and saying, well, that's what's kept them up, because there won't be too many. Yes, they got them in the Championship. Leeds, I'm not convinced. I'm a little bit unknown in terms of have they really strengthened on the top of last season. So Daniel Farke has got it all on there. That place, when it's rocking, Ellen Road, can be brilliant, but at the same time, it's an emotional place to play, and they rely and work heavily on the atmosphere there. Have the players got Premier League nous and skill to try and see them through? Maybe. I don't see it. So I see a team like Brentford struggling under Keith Andrews. I see West Ham struggling. I don't think there's a great positivity about West Ham at the minute. So I think there might be two Premier League sides in West Ham and Brentford that might struggle. But one of the three to stay up, as I said, and I agree with James completely, I think if anyone's got a chance, I think it's going to be Sunderland.
Yeah, and I'll give Vincent Kompany a call after the show and break it to him that he's back at Burnley and no longer at Bayern Munich next season. Of course, Scott Parker doing a brilliant job to get Burnley back into the Premier League. Let's wrap this up. I just need three names from each of you, and I'll give you my three names for the following three categories as we predict the Premier League season that starts today with Liverpool against Bournemouth. Player of the season, James Olley.
Oh, God, I'm not giving this any thought to it. I'm going to just be boring and say Mo Salah.
Okay, Don Hutchison.
I'll go inside one, Florian Wirtz.
I'm going Florian Wirtz as well. Next one, top scorer. Don, you can start.
Right side, Mo Salah.
Okay, James.
I can't say Salah again, can I?
You can say what you like.
I'll say Erling Haaland for the sake of vague variety.
And I'm going Haaland as well. And I'll start with the best signing of the season, Zubimendi for Arsenal. Don.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree. I mean, I really want to say Florian Wirtz.
You can. That's fine.
I know, but I mean, the window's still open, so it could be Isaac if he goes to Liverpool. I'm going to say Wirtz. So I've had two Wirtz and one Salah.
You've had two Salahs and one. Oh no, you went Haaland, didn't you, for top scorer, James? Who's your best signing of the season?
I will go for João Pedro for reasons already discussed.
There you go. Well, as long as he gets off to a good start on Sunday, because I've picked him in my Premier League fantasy team. Hopefully do better than I did last season. A number of teams will be hoping they do better this season than last season. For Liverpool, they're the ones to aim for. My thanks to former Liverpool player Don Hutchison, to James Olley as well. We'll be back tomorrow with Aston Villa against Newcastle reaction as ESPN FC Live is back for the new season.